This is VolcaKnowledge, the podcast where we explore how volcanoes interact across nature, culture, and society. I'm your host, volcanologist Sam Mitchell, and every episode I'll be joined by a new guest to get their unique perspective on the world of volcanoes and geology through the eyes of art, history, media, education, industry, and so much more. If you're watching, thanks for watching. If you're listening, thanks for listening. Remember, you can catch all of our episodes on many streaming platforms. Let's go and meet our guest. Enjoy the episode. Many of us have heard of the acronym STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths, but probably less of us have heard of the acronym of STEAM, where we're adding art into the middle of that. And so art is a really important part of how we educate people and engage people within the fields of STEM. So I'm really excited to be joined today by a science artist, illustrator and educator, Vojta Hybl, joining us from Scotland. Hi Vojta, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of VolcaKnowledge. So I've followed your work for a good few years now, and I even have some of it on my shelves behind me as well. So to kick things off, we're just going to do a couple of quick fire questions regarding volcanoes. The very first one being, do you have a favorite volcano or favorite volcanic spot?
Hmm. I would probably have to say Eyjafjallajökull in Iceland because that's where I did my undergrad dissertation. So I sort of spent almost a week camping on the volcano and researching it, and then spending months writing about that. So definitely has a special place in my heart.
Wow, so you're actually out there for your dissertation as well.
Yes, it was difficult. We had because I couldn't rent a Jeep or anything. I wasn't like you need to be like 25 to be able to rent a 4x4 in Iceland.
Oh,
So we
okay.
had to like get a bus and they dropped us off near the volcano. Then we trekked like 13K to get to the site. It
Well, that
was quite something, but looking back, it was a good experience.
that is dedication to the thesis.
Oh, I know.
Great, wow, very interesting. So the second one would be now if there's if there's a volcanic place you've always wanted to go to.
There are so many different ones, and I
I'm going to
feel like
make
it
you choose
changes
one.
all the time. I think if I was like going right now, I would love to see the Cascades on the west coast of North America. You know, those volcanoes. I would love to see some of them.
Yeah, they're really stunning parts of the country and really stunning volcanoes. Fantastic variety as
I
well,
know.
and most of them are also like national parks or monuments, so they're kind of
Hmm.
geared towards getting people to go and see them.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's a nice kind of introduction to stuff. So, what it'd be nice to hear about now is more about your background, how you got into this field because your background in geology, but now you're an artist. So, it'd be nice to hear about that journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, definitely. So I was always interested in art, and at one point when I was younger, I thought I would go to art school. And then at high school, we were learning about volcanoes in geography, and I was like, that's really interesting. I feel like I would like to study that some more. And then after this one class, I sort of started teaching myself about rocks and geology, and then decided I wanted to study that at uni. So I got into the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and yeah, so I moved to Scotland 2019, started studying geology. Um, Sort of midway through my degree, switched to geology and physical geography because I really enjoyed learning about the processes as well, not just the
Hmm.
rocks. Um, and yeah, the art came in. I feel like it's always been there, but um, properly came in sort of 2021. So after lockdown, when I was really just sketching,
Okay.
drawing rocks for fun, and then I started drawing lots of diagrams in my notes from lectures, sort of to just help me memorize it better and learn about it better. That's just how I enjoyed learning. And then some of my friends were like, "Oh, you should start selling them." I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I was like, "Oh, maybe I should." And yeah, I launched Rocks on Paper January 2021. I just sort of set up an Instagram account and an Etsy
Yep.
shop, and yeah, just didn't really think much of that. Just something to do on the side.
And look at it
And
now.
yeah, look at it now. It's grown. I've got my own website now. I'm doing markets and events. So it was kind of by accident. But it's just grown kind of organically. What definitely helps with the growth was sharing lots of my field sketches on my Instagram that
Yeah.
people seem to enjoy that.
Yeah,
And then yeah.
especially for lots of people who have done either a geology, geography, or some field-based degree, they understand that and they can connect with that need to do a field sketch. But then I think also a lot of people are envious when people are natural artists, because I look back at some of my field books and I'll tell you I am not a natural artist. And so I saw some of yours and I just kind of thought, oh, I wish I could have drawn like that during my degree.
I think it definitely helps, but there is also lots and lots of practice behind it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not just talent. It's never just talent. Anyone can do it.
So what was the very first thing you ever decided to sell? What was the very first piece? Do you remember?
So it was these, I think I called them triplets, and it was basically just like three columns where I drew um different topics from geology. So there was one of fossils, and there was one of metamorphic features, there was one of thin sections. So those were the first ones. And then eventually, what was kind of my biggest product at that time was I drew 26 volcanoes over 26 consecutive days, sort of one
I think
volcano
this
for
is
every
how
letter of the alphabet.
I think this is how I found you. Actually,
Ah, was
was the
it?
A to Z of volcanoes.
Yeah. So I that was just like a fun challenge for me. I never planned to do anything with them, and then people were like, "I would love to buy a poster of that." So I did some posters, and they basically sold out overnight. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I could do this more professionally now." So that was when it kind of switched to one moment. I was like, I should start taking this more seriously.
so, so it was
And
that
yeah,
poster that
yeah,
really
it
kind
was
of,
that poster
yeah,
that
amazing.
kind
Well,
of
I've
launched it.
got at the moment it's probably that I've hidden it behind another book. That's not
Yes,
on
it.
purpose because I love that poster, but I realized the angle doesn't work. But so that was a challenge. Did you do one every single day?
Yeah, every single day. It
Wow.
was more time consuming to choose the volcanoes than to actually draw them, because
Cert-
for some letters you've got so many volcanoes, and then finding one for X was really difficult.
Yes, I can imagine. I remember seeing that, and that was my first curiosity. When I looked at the poster, I went, "What have you chosen for X?" And
Yes.
it was somewhere I'd never heard of before.
And
So,
it
yeah,
is, I can't remember what the kind of mainstream name for this volcano is, but it's somewhere South America, so this is the indigenous name. Um,
yes,
But that was the only one I could find that also had a picture of it on the internet, because lots
yeah,
of them are
that's
so obscure that you can't find them.
yeah. Or that there's a name of something somewhere, and then you go and find a picture of it online, and it's some old ancient volcano that's 5 million years old, and there's no surface expression of
Exactly.
it. But so you were in your, so I kind of jumped into you a bit then, but you were in degree, you started to sell your work, and so how did things kind of finish up as you wrapped up your dissertation? Because it's clear that volcanoes were a big influence both on your
Yeah.
dissertation and your artistry, but now you do a lot more.
Yes. So it was quite interesting actually. During my dissertation on Eyjafjallajökull, I was just kind of sitting there looking at the volcano after a full day of in the field, and yeah, I just sort of thought that I didn't really want to go into academia suddenly. I didn't want to go into being a scientist.
I like how
Like
you got that epiphany whilst you were sat there for your
yeah,
dissertation
whilst I
work.
was doing research, I was like, actually, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And up until that point, I had thought, yeah, I want to be a scientist. And then I was just sort of sitting there and listening to the birds and smelling the volcano. It was from that time I've got like this memory of time. It was just like such a strong smell there. Um, anyway, that's besides the point. Uh, yeah, just sitting there, I was like, there must be more ways to do geology than just through science, through research. Um, so that was the epiphany. I was like, yeah,
Hmm.
I don't want to do research. I want to do something else. And then I finished my degree, so it was 2023. I graduated, and I applied for a master's in outdoor environmental and sustainability education.
Okay,
So
interesting
sort of,
title for a degree.
oh yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a really different degree to, a sciencey undergrad in geology. So kind of the transition from what was, really objective, research based into this, which is learning about philosophy and what is nature, who are we in the world, kind of taking my geological experiences into this and trying to combine them, plus my art on top of that as well. It's kind of
Yeah,
a big melting pot of these three things together. Um, so sort of like trying to understand that and how can we, you know, use more ways to look at the world in science communication and education. So whereas that's through art, that's through the ways of knowing than just through science. So uh, it's been kind of a journey,
yeah.
but yeah, I've enjoyed every single part of it.
So do you find that your art is actually helping as well within this degree program as well because you're able to add that different, I guess, perspective of,
Yeah, I think
looking
so.
looking at science not just objectively through the physical, observations that we make, but also how I don't want to say how does a rock emote? How does nature
Yeah,
emote, I
I
guess, or
think
how does it express itself?
because in science we are really good at separating ourselves from our emotions to just sort of think of things, don't sort of feel things. But we are still human. We still have emotions about the rocks, and even when as a scientists we are researching them. Um, so I think through my work and outdoor education and through geology, I'm sort of trying to combine how we can understand a rock, but we can also know a rock. There's to me that these are kind of very different
Yeah,
things, like understanding a rock from a scientific point of view, but knowing a rock when you kind of just spend time with it and start to maybe form some sort of connection to it. This sounds sort of a bit out there, but it doesn't have to be. I think we are just really good at separating ourselves from these kind of more
yeah.
human emotions. But as humans, we are rocks as well. Um,
Yes.
so
There we go. That's a good tagline.
S- Indeed. So, and this is the sort of thing I'm working on right now. So I'm just finishing up my dissertation for my master's,
Mhm.
and it's all about how can we communicate, teach about rocks and geology, maybe slightly differently than what we are used to and what we have been used to for the past however many years, to introduce something new, something fresh, and get people excited about rocks.
Yeah.
Show them they are not
And
just boring and gray.
is what you're writing, is it all very novel, or have you managed to actually find other works and, literature out or research in this kind of like, I guess, philosophy of earth science?
Yeah,
Is there anything out there?
there is some research, and there's this really good paper that came out this year, which is just looking at how people perceive geology, which it's not very good. Like people think it's just oil and old men with beards.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's how geology is presented, and if we try these different points of view and look at it through art, look at it through emotions, maybe we can change how non-geologists look at rocks.
Interesting. So I guess from your time being based in Scotland, particularly for influencing your artwork, you have an entire playground. So I don't know how much you spent during your undergraduate because you started, in the overlap periods going into the COVID years. But did you find even just that maybe first year being able to get out into the fields a real influence to kind of like excite your field art?
Yeah,
Because I guess that's
100%.
where it all started.
Yeah, yeah, you are absolutely right. Yeah, so it was through the field sketches. One of the first field trip that I ever went on was to Sticker Point.
Mm,
So Hutton's on conformity, and we just sort of went there. I knew nothing about rocks. It was like the second week of starting my degree.
wow.
But even that experience was like, yeah, wow, this is really cool. I really like being around rocks and being in the field. Um, and then we did a really nice field trip up to the northwest Scotland in Inchnadamh, Assynt,
Yep.
sort of famous area for geology as well. And that was really beautiful. It's such a nice place. And spending 2 weeks researching those rocks was great. So I went
Yeah.
back there for my master's dissertation now and sort of
Oh,
comparing
okay.
those experiences. So that's where it's all coming together. Um,
How did you find going back there? I guess what maybe 4 years later, something like that,
yeah,
to
yeah. So I was
how
there
your
2020.
perception has changed.
So I was there 2022 and just 2024.
Okay.
So a few months ago. And it was quite difficult to connect back to the place from like a different point of view because I've got all these experiences from 2022 when I was
Okay.
researching the rocks and mapping the rocks, and now I was trying to engage with the rocks in an artistic way. And it was difficult at first to kind of let go of what I
Yeah.
knew, um, and kind of see them in a new light. But it was um yeah, I think I'm still trying to process it for and
Yeah.
write about it for the dissertation, but
Uh,
it
as you say, you spend so much time, within a physical degree, particularly for geology. You go to a place, spend a few weeks there. So I did my mapping dissertation around Ullapool, so just south
mhm.
of the Inchnadamh area. And I think if I went back there now, over 11, 12 years later, I would go there and I would probably still immediately go back into my geological mapping mindset,
Yeah, yeah, that's
even if I
exactly
tried
it.
to step away. So as you say,
Yeah,
it's quite difficult to maybe reconnect with old areas. So I guess, do you find going to new areas is actually the better way forward?
yeah, sometimes it's so much easier, because I don't have any experiences there. I might know about that place. I try to, learn myself, teach myself about the geology, so what I'm going to see. Um, but I don't have those memories from there, so it's kind of much
Mhm.
easier to look at it and just explore. Um, because doing geology, we are taught to look at the landscape in a very different way, and once you understand deep time and how rocks form, you can't really look at it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all geologists have this. Um, so then when you go to a new place, you kind of discover it for yourself again. So it makes it easier in many ways.
Yeah. So I guess going into the field, to start off, you have a notebook and a couple of field pencils, and that's all you have equipped with. But of
Hmm.
course, your artwork is so much more and than just field sketches in notebooks. So you do paintwork, watercolors, wax, pen work as well. So what's we get kind of nice to hear about the different types of like techniques and
Yeah.
mediums that you use. Do you have a preferred one, or is there particular preferences for different things?
Hmm. Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, kind of discovering my own style and how it's changed through the years. So I started off with just pencils and pens, just sort of drawing and sketching. So because that was what I was used to and what I knew best, so I sort of defaulted to using them. And then as I sort of doing more work, I tried out different media and different art techniques. So I then switched to sort of alcohol-based markers. So I worked with them for a bit, and then acrylic pens. So that's what the volcanoes were drawn with. Um,
Hmm.
and then eventually, I wasn't really getting the results that I wanted. So when I was painting rocks, I couldn't really mix my own colors, and so that was something was missing. And then I discovered gouache, which is kind of an opaque watercolor, is the best way to describe it.
Okay.
So that's a form of paint. And I just got a set of tubes and started painting. And that's what I use until now. So that might have been maybe a year, 2 years ago when I
Yeah.
started using that. And that's what have used ever since. And it's quite funny
Okay.
because I never used to like painting, and now it's the thing I do almost every day. So it's been a nice journey.
Yeah, I guess how many? on average, how many hours a day or maybe hours a week might you spend physically doing
Mm,
art? Because obviously you're in the throes of a dissertation at the moment,
yeah.
so it's
So
a bit different.
it really depends. Usually, like what my process is, there is more research than actual painting, I think, most of the time. So before I do any sort of painting, whether it's a rock or a cross section of volcano, I spend lots of time reading about it, looking at geological maps, different specimens to kind of,
Mm,
understand what I am actually doing. So I think that's where my science background comes in, just doing lots of
yeah,
research, observations. And then the painting itself is relatively quick. So I kind of, I'm not a scientific illustrator per se, so it's not when I'm painting a rock, it's not a one-to-one exact match as in a
yeah,
photograph, but there is some sort of my own interpretation, my own style in it that kind of, I don't know, captures the chaotic nature of nature,
yeah.
the unpredictability. So like my brushstrokes are quite quick and quite not randomly placed, but intuitive. That's the word.
Yeah, as you say, you could just be an artist exactly replicating what you're seeing, but because of your kind of like philosophical approach, it's how you're interpreting the texture and the feel and the color
Yeah, yeah,
itself. But it
exactly.
sounds like with this, what with these kind of like opaque, would you say gouache?
Gouache, yeah.
Gouache. Um, it sounds like these were able to actually capture colors for you better, which is such an intrinsic part of geology and earth
Yeah,
observation
yeah.
is that color. So is that what was a big appeal, is that it managed to capture like almost real colors that you were looking
Yeah,
for?
yeah, exactly. So I've got a set of tubes and I can just mix my own colors by combining different ones. And it's been a really nice thing to just be able to experiment with that and see which colors make the best shade for whatever I'm painting. And then, when you mix some colors, you don't really expect the resulting shade to happen. So one of my favorite ones at the moment to use is Payne's Gray. That's the name of the color. And it's made when you mix brown and blue to make this really nice gray. And I use that
Okay.
for lots of my rocks. So yeah, it's just about figuring out what works and how to capture the rock.
Yeah, because as you say, you've dabbled in lots of styles of illustration. Like I say, I'm quite familiar with what a lot of say your rocks look like, but you've done a lot of diagram work as well,
Mhm.
and some of that's quite minimalist or artistic. So you've done like scientific diagrams, but then also very simple schematic like illustrations. I think I have one of them, which
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
kind of like the lavas and the intrusive
yeah.
geology, and I really enjoy um kind of like minimalist abstract art,
Hmm.
kind of like, so you can like take your own interpretation for that. So if you just enjoy dabbling in different styles and artworks.
Yeah. I think it just comes with being creative and you kind of try different things. And this, like the diagrams that you talk about, is like where the geology background came in, was kind of looking at cross sections and 3D visualizations of the Earth. And in geology, that's what you are taught. So this was sort of my own take on it, kind of make it, if you know what you're looking at, it's got a
Yeah,
meaning for you. But if you are not a geologist, it still kind of looks nice and it's a nice piece of work. But you don't necessarily need to know what it means. So it's got kind of these layered meanings in it, which
yeah.
appeals to geologists, non-geologists as well.
As you say, it's got that nice kind of middle ground of being
Mm.
able to engage people in a subject without them completely knowing exactly what they're looking at. And
Yes.
sometimes that's the best way for us to try and engage, because we can throw so much scientific jargon and facts and almost this trying to think of the best word to describe it, almost like a frontier of like, we're pushing our science onto you and you're going to enjoy
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
Whereas through this, because it's artistic, it's illustrative, it's capturing the eyes, so it's drawing people in even if they don't know exactly what they're looking at.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it might encourage them to think, oh, actually maybe I want to go and read up a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm sort of hoping to do with my work is just give you that starting point to explore more, especially for people who are maybe interested in rocks but not in as much depth, or people who are not interested in rocks at all or geology. Um, And it's been really nice doing some events. So last year I started doing some markets, just like makers markets in Scotland. And it's been a really nice way to do science communication in a very informal, unexpected setting. So, people come there to buy art and ceramics and whatnot. And then they come to my booth and we start chatting about rocks. And they're like, yeah, I love rocks. I always collect pebbles. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And then we just get chatting about geology and what it means and all these concepts. And, through looking at the art itself, I can
Yeah,
show them what, all these different geological processes and everything that comes with that. And it's such a rewarding way to do science communication in a place you wouldn't really expect it.
yeah.
Um,
VolcaKnowledge is proud to be sponsored by John Wainwright & Co. through Wainwright Aggregates, and Brunton, Wyoming, making the world's most reliable compasses, professional transits, and navigational tools. Since founding in 1891, John Wainwright & Co. are one of Southwest England's largest independent quarrying companies. As well as extracting and processing premium basalt from their quarry in Somerset, they produce construction materials and operate a successful contracting division. Let's hear from some of their employees.
My name's Duncan. I am a weighbridge operative and also work in the asphalt plant. Essentially, a weighbridge operative is a receptionist for lorry drivers. So they'll come into me, I'll book them in for whatever product they need, they'll go off, get loaded, they'll then come back to me, I'll print off a ticket and send them on their way. Yeah, so since I started with John Wainwright's, I completed an apprenticeship. It gives you a really good overview of the industry as a whole, and you'll learn a lot that isn't specifically to do with your job role. It gives you a really good overview of not only the jobs that you're doing, but also all jobs applicable to the quarry industry, different types of quarries, different roles within the quarries, ways of progressing within the industry once you're established. They're really good at listening to you. So if you have a certain area you want to progress into or a skill you want to learn, they'll certainly look to train you in that and open up the opportunities to move around the quarry.
Yes, well, you actually did the perfect segue. I was literally going to ask you, okay, so when you also do events, so when you go to these events, how does it connect with people? But as you say, it's a fantastic place. You go to a scientific conference and you're in an echo chamber. You're surrounded by people who are attending that conference, and they're already there because they have an understanding of the planet, of the processes you're talking about, whereas you're throwing yourself into, an art show in a small town. and like what's the variety of people that you have there? So you've got your stand, which is all geological drawings, but you could be stood next to someone doing, I don't know, knit patterns, or
yeah.
someone next door like selling flowers.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the variety of people there is so nice as well. Because that influences my work. So, not coming from an artistic background, I haven't gone to art school. So it can feel quite impostery being around these people who,
Okay.
do art for a career. And then here's me, oh yeah, I did geology and now I'm painting rocks. So it can feel a bit like, oh, do I actually belong? Am I an artist? So this feels quite reassuring as
Yeah.
well. Like, yeah,
But
I can be here.
how's the reception been when you've met, say, other artists at these places?
Mm,
Because I imagine, yes, that kind of like feeling of imposter syndrome at the very beginning, but now you've settled into it. It would surprise me if these artists aren't actually incredibly intrigued by your background and by your journey.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's because my work is so niche that they are like, oh, that's really interesting. And I've had a chance to work with some of them as well, do different collaborations. So
Amazing.
one of my first one was with Agate and Air. So that's run by April. She's a textile designer and she designs fabric inspired by geology, mainly of Scotland. So we did a collaboration that was of granophyre, which is kind of this intergrowth of quartz and feldspar based on one of my thin sections and a painting of that thin section. Um, and now people are wearing that on them, which is so cool to think. And then I did another one recently with Stephanie Chung, who is a jeweler. So she cuts
Mm.
rocks into these interchangeable rings where you can just swap the rock. And she did a design show done in London called Collect. and I did some paintings of the rocks before she cut them for that. So that's been really nice to be involved with these people who are artists and makers, and just get my work out there in a different way and reach different people.
Yeah. Now, of course, you're at a bit of a crunch time at the moment with wrapping up your masters. So I imagine as much as you want to, like to give that everything your best, you must be itching to get back to everything full time and to be able to throw yourself into ideas, new collaborations.
Yes, 100%. I've got a really exciting project coming up that I can't talk about yet, but
Okay. So there we go. Watch this space. Listen to
it's
this
something
space.
I'm so excited about. I want to do it for a long time, so it's finally happening. But for some things I'm working on right now, so I just released my newest collection called Underlands, which is looking at geological cross sections so far in Scotland. So these are all inspired by geological maps and cross sections, with my own twist on them, sort of trying to get people, non-geologists, to think about the stories held in the rocks beneath our feet. So I've done things like Glencoe, a really famous place. So many people pass through there, but do you actually realize what the rocks are and what stories they have? So that's sort of what I'm trying to work on now, is bridging that gap and trying to
Yeah.
get people engaged.
So this is almost perfect chance for your own promotional shout out, because if people want to hear about the projects coming up, where can they, we've talked about your website already, so rocksonpaper.com. Where else can folks follow you or keep up to date?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram as well, just Rocks on Paper. I've got a newsletter that you can sign up to through my website, and if there are any events, I just send an email to let you know. So I'm hoping to do some more workshops next year. So I did a few with National Museum Scotland and Dynamic Earth in Edinburgh, sort of drawing rocks from different points of view, scientific, artistic, and getting people engaged with art and science.
Yeah. Have you found yourself at any scientific conferences yet then?
No, not yet. I would love to do some.
Okay, well there we go. Well let's make that happen
Yes.
at some
If
point, because
if if you if you are out there and you want some art at your scientific conference, let me know.
there
We'll
we
draw
go.
some rocks together.
That I think that would be taken incredibly well, because as you said, you've already said it yourself, we find it so hard sometimes to get ourselves out of our physical scientific being, and
Hmm.
sometimes we just need to release and let go. So we will follow up on that, and we will try and make that happen to get an artistic workshop in some UK conference at some point.
Hmm. And it's really nice to, like, for mindfulness and just de-stressing. It's just
Yeah.
a different way to approach the same subject.
So, one thing in science is we always feel constrained by time and limitations and deadlines. How long do you think this kind of, what do you think is the ideal time for a session? For you to just kind of
Um,
disconnect and do some artwork.
so far, what I've done was an hour and a half, and it
An hour and
gives a really nice flow to it. So sort of draw some rocks, explore the textures and the structures, and then wrap up. It's so far been good.
There we go. An hour and a half. We can
Yeah.
easily make that work and
I can
incorporate
I
that
can
into
make it
something.
shorter.
Yeah. No. I think we want to extend it so people don't feel limited by
Oh,
time
I
and they
can I
can
can
let
extend
go.
it as well.
There we go. So, just I guess some kind of like wrap up points now. What's been, the most rewarding part of this for you, I guess, personally, along your journey
Hmm.
to thinking about where you are right now and what's to come?
I think there are two things. One of them was definitely getting to experience all these different ways of looking at the same thing. So getting to research a rock through geological interpretations. I'll say that again. Getting to understand rocks from the scientific point of view, and understanding the concepts of geology, but then applying art techniques and different philosophies to the same thing. Just having this breadth of points of view and experiences, and being able to combine them has been really rewarding. And the other thing is what I mentioned, just talking to people. It can be quite isolating, just doing art from your own home. But then having these events and talking to people and seeing them get excited about what you are excited about is just such a nice feeling.
Amazing. And so, if it's a very specific avenue what you've decided to go into, and it's also almost quite a risk because
Yeah.
there's not many people do it. There's no guidebook. There's no online articles. If how do you become a geological artist? Like they don't exist because it's folks like you, the very few folks like you, who are actually making this a viable possible route. So for anybody, not just in geology or earth science, but any science field that might consider going into science illustration, science artistry, do you have any almost words of wisdom or words of encouragement that you could pass on?
I think just be open to possibilities, whatever comes up, but also don't be afraid to say no. If something, it's not for you, if there's a project that comes up, but it's like, no, just say no, it's fine. And it just um, make shows that you know what you are worth as an artist, as a scientist. Um, and chat to people. The more people you know, the more opportunities there will be. So you can know
Yeah.
everything there is to know, but unless you have someone to tell it to, it's not really worth it.
Yeah, you don't know unless you don't ask.
Exactly.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't know what windows or doors that might open through some that person might not be the person that creates that collaboration or that connection, but there might be someone else who they can hand you over to.
Yeah, exactly. And there will always be something you can work on.
Yeah. Wonderful. So I guess as a kind of wrap up, we've spoken a lot about the artistry, and obviously there's a lot of kind of volcanic influence for your roots and your journey into geology and your artistry. So I'd be curious: is there any volcanic sort of like memory that kind of sticks in your mind, or even if it's tied to artistry or not? But
Maybe an extinct volcano.
okay.
Okay, so earlier this year for my master's, we went to the Isle of Rum on the west coast of Scotland. So that used to be a volcano like 60 million years ago. And one of the days we hiked up Hallival, which is one of the mountains that makes the rum coolants. And it is made of layered peridotite, so sort of peridotite, troctolite, anorthosite, those sort of rocks that formed in a magma chamber. And we went up there at night to see shearwaters, which is a type of seabird that nest there in the peridotite layers. And we were just hiking up in complete darkness and then sitting on the rocks and listening to the birds around you. It was such an eerie experience, but so beautiful as well. And just goes to show how you don't need to be interested in rocks to appreciate them. And rocks influence everything. So it's why those birds could nest in those peridotite layers, because they are so crumbly and easy to burrow into.
Right. Okay.
And I found a rock in the complete darkness. Going up that hill, the mountain, I was like, I need to get a rock from here because, these rocks are so unique. So in the complete darkness with my head torch, I was scrambling around to find a rock and found a really nice one. So I'm really proud of that.
Wonderful. And I really like what you just said then about, you don't need to be appreciating the geology to appreciate what the geology is doing
Yeah,
for you and for the rest of nature.
exactly. And you can find your own way into engaging with rocks. It can be through rock climbing, it could be through art, it can be through meditation. You can just walk on the rocks, you can study them, you can find your own way to engage with them. It doesn't have to be through science, through art. It can be your own way, and that makes it most worthwhile for you. If that makes sense to you to engage with them in your own way, then that's the best way to do it.
Amazing. I think that's the perfect ending there is, basically find your own way to engage and appreciate the natural world and the earth around you. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Vojta. It's really, really interesting to hear about your work, to hear more about the journey. As I say, I've followed your work for, well, probably since very early on in its journey, since you released the Volcanoes A to Z. So it's been great to see your growth as well, and to see you getting out there to be at events and to see other people seeing your work in person as well. So yeah, just we'll put all the links as well within the description so people can follow along. But yeah, for Rocks on Paper, then please go along, and please also everybody support science artists. Science artists don't get by without people, buying their products. So we don't want to sit here and ask for money, but basically, if you can give Vojta some money to keep doing,
I'll give you some art in exchange.
There we go. So that sounds like a good deal to me.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everybody for listening to this episode of VolcaKnowledge. Thanks, Vojta.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of VolcaKnowledge. Remember, you can catch all of our previous episodes either through our website, www.volcaknowledge.com, or you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you stream your favourite podcasts. You can also watch all of our episodes on our YouTube channel, VolcaKnowledge, and don't forget to sign up to our social media channels at VolcaKnowledge through Instagram and BlueSky. Please leave us any feedback and comments and topics maybe you want to see on a future episode. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.